50 years ago, I had an experience that has guided me and inspired me every day of my life since that day. Now, I was just a young architect starting out my career, and I had designed a house in Aspen, and this house by design had a lot of spirit and intuition in it. It had massive stone pillars that supported the roof and great vaulted ceilings and unique glass that looked out over the town of Aspen, even had hand-rubbed woodwork throughout the house. I mean, this house was designed to make you feel warm and comfortable and protected. Well, one day, I was standing in the great room, enjoying the winter view, spectacular view in Aspen, and a neighbor walked in for her first visit. And she stepped into the room and paused and looked around, and then looked at me and said, "It's beautiful. It's beautiful." I had no idea what she was talking about. Absolutely no idea. Was it the stone or the woodwork? Maybe it was the view or even the paint colors. I just really didn't know. But I wondered why. That question stayed with me for many, many years, until about 15 years ago when I started to research the connection between beauty, neuroscience, and architecture. And what I found there was that science can tell us exactly why she called the room beautiful. For thousands of years, architects and artists have used beauty to inspire them and guide them to create timeless and iconic works of art. The slide on the screen right now contains some of the greatest pieces of architecture that mankind has ever created. That slide represents 3,000 years of documented history, several different major continents, and many different civilizations. Some of those buildings are made of brick and stone, some are wood, one's even made of concrete, glass, and steel. But despite all these variations of time and materials and distance, they all share one common denominator: beauty. For over 50 years now, I've observed my clients and looked at the aspects of beauty that apply to our lives. And there is one stunning fact that keeps floating to the top that I want to share with you, and that is beauty is good for our health. Here's how that's possible. Your brains process 11 million bits of information per second. Upon that processing, it's separated into two categories immediately: survival and pleasure. Well, because pleasure is related directly to beauty, I'm going to talk about the qualities of pleasure. A pleasure response happens when your brain processes a scene that includes aspects of being familiar, it's non-threatening, and it has the potential for pleasure. When those three things are present, then your brain goes into rest and relaxation. It's an efficient processing mode, and your brain likes that because it doesn't have to stress out to process a lot of difficult information. Well, when you go into that efficient processing mode, a whole set of complex hormones, feel-good hormones, are released into your bloodstream, and the result of that is a feeling of pleasure. And the result of that is the exclamation, "It's beautiful." Now, there's some really important health benefits to those hormones: lower blood pressure, lower heart rate, improved cardiovascular system, improved immune system performance, lower stress rates, and it improves the length of your life. All of that is good for your health. Beauty is good for your health. We're returning to the images in the slide. These images all have aspects of being recognizable, are non-threatening, and they have pleasure-inducing patterns. That is a pleasure response, and that is why they're all called beautiful. Now, what if I told you that there's a pattern embedded in each one of those buildings that each one of you instantaneously discerned as a beauty response? Early in my career, I had an event happen that significantly impacted the course of my work. I was presenting some drawings to a family, and their young daughter was standing in the meeting, and it was going really well. And at one point, the daughter said, "It's a face," and pointed to 2 windows up high and a door on the ground in the center below. We all politely acknowledged her comment, and the meeting continued on. But later on that day, when I was back in the office, I wondered, is there a connection between a facial pattern and architectural forms? It's something that had never been taught, never occurred to me, but I started to research it. Well, it turns out there is a connection, and the connection is profound, and it affects each one of you. When we're born, we are born looking for a face. Charles Darwin theorized that we have to find a face in order to survive. 65% of the neuronal structure of a newborn is dedicated to face recognition. Now, a child doesn't see well when they're first born. Everything's fuzzy and blurry for the first few months. But they're looking around frantically, trying to find this image. 3 dark spots represent a face to a newborn child. Well, here's those 3 dark spots converted to a graphic form, and this is known as the facial pattern. Well, that facial pattern happens to align with something else that we know really well as a 3x3 pattern, which you see this frequently through the viewfinder of your smartphone camera. Here's a 3x3 pattern standing on its own now. Well, it's these patterns that show up in our art and architecture over and over and over, and they have for thousands of years. So here's an image showing the 3x3 pattern applied to one of the images from the first slide, and incidentally, the facial pattern in Notre Dame is the 2 towers, upper left, upper right, and the main portal in the center down below. There's multiple patterns that produce a pleasure reaction in that building. Well, why does this matter? 3x3 patterns, facial patterns. During the bonding that happens between mother and child in the first years of a child's life, the child is learning to associate these patterns with love, trust, empathy, and pleasure. Thus, when the pattern shows up later in life, the pleasure-reward mechanism is subliminally and automatically activated, creating a beauty response. So returning to the woman who visited my house 50 years ago, when she walked in the room, her brain perceived a scene that was non-threatening, had aspects of being familiar, and contained patterns that were pleasure-inducing. And the patterns that were in that room, the facial pattern and the 3x3 pattern, was scattered throughout the room. That room was initiating a pleasure response that was supported by a pattern that every human being intuitively knows, the 3x3 facial pattern. And that's why she called the room beautiful. When I started the talk, I talked about being a young architect, just starting out. Well, clearly I'm approaching the end of my career here now, and I would say if there's any wisdom that I've acquired over the years of work and research, it's this. Beauty is important to our lives, more important than you might think. And it's easy to achieve. Here's a suggestion. Go home this evening and take 2 medium-sized photographs and hang them symmetrically above your fireplace. That's the beginning of a facial pattern. Or rearrange your furniture into a 3x3 pattern. The more you use this, the stronger it is. My experience says that you can turn a room into a place you don't want to spend time into a room that you don't want to leave just by utilizing this pattern. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing that increased health and well-being can be achieved just by utilizing and experiencing beauty. So I'm going to leave you with this point. Science has shown us that our built environment affects our health and well-being, positively and negatively. This is an important development as it is causing us to reassess the spaces we live in and the buildings and homes that we design. Beauty is a powerful and positive force in our lives that can help rebalance the equation in architecture. Let's use it as we go forward. It'll make the world a more beautiful and a healthier place. Thank you very much.